Alright, what's poppin', people? We're back, and I've got a splitting headache today. So that's been pretty exciting to deal with. However, the journey must continue. We must continue our coverage of current NU meta trends, and conveniently, it's April 1st. And while that may be April Fool's Day, I'm very appreciative that Marty does not mess around with us. And we actually do have the legitimate tier shifts. So we're going to cover them. Now, these are some huge meta-changing ones that I think are pretty impactful going forward. So, let's first cover what we lost. As you can see here, we lost a couple relevant Pokemon. In specific, Copperajah and Frostmoth, two of the best mons in the tier, both went to RU. Now, I can't speak to why Copperajah rose. My guess is just that at the end of the day, it is a Steel-type Stealth Rock setter, and those have always been consistently solid just throughout Pokemon's history. Steel is a great defensive typing. Most Steel types learn Stealth Rock, so these often end up just being relevant no matter where they are, and as a result, when a Pokemon is pretty decent, it'll rise up if it is a Steel type with Stealth Rock. Unless there's just too much competition to justify it. Now, I can't speak to what's in RE right now beyond, like, a whole bunch of hyper offense, based on what I've heard. But my guess is that at the end of the day, Copperajah can fit decently onto balance builds. It's really bulky with Whirlwind, and Terra potentially helps mess with hyper offense. It might also be in reaction to Frostmoth, which did rise. And this plays into the RU hyper offense trend, where Frostmoth is just super, super solid. Same thing in NU. It does the same thing in RU. It could have Terra with, any amount of typings, ground, fire, fairy, ghost, etc. All of these helping to mess over potential defensive counterplay, or even offensive counterplay. And alongside Abomasnow and Satitan, they've got real nice Aurora Veil to help support these ice types. Help compensate for their not great defensive typing, potentially take away the need to use Terra as a defensive measure. And of course, Aurora Veil is always super potent for these one-turn setup sweepers such as the Titan. Now, it's not like it rose from NU, it rose out of our ban list. This just means that if we wanted to try and reban it, or unban it I should say, we don't have that option for us now until it drops back into the ban list. So, Abomasnow also of course left because, again, Aurora Veil. I don't view this as a huge thing. Abomasnow wasn't really getting a ton of use. Well, that's a lie. In Swiss, hyper offense has been really common, and Abomasnow is one of the best enablers of it. Although it's a lot of people just reusing the hyper offense team by Toki. At the end of the day, we have a lot of setup sweepers, and Abomasnow is a good enabler of those with Aurora Veil, even without Light Clay. It doesn't really matter because Aurora Veil is able to make up for that big loss of turns because you get your screens up in a single turn. So you actually still do get a little bit more time compared to if you ran traditional dual screens without Light Clay. So it's still a good option. And in Whiscash Rose, who knows? Maybe it's their lead of choice. This is just irrelevant to NU. Whiscash wasn't really getting use anyway. It's more just it's like a funny niche option you could try out, and it's no longer around. And now we get to the mods that dropped to Indy, though. Oh my lord. So, here's my interpretation. So, RU actually lost two mods, Alamamola and Aquabreed Paldean Taurus. And what I was understanding is that the reason Barraskewda and Floatzel both weren't too hot in RU anymore, and Manual Rain struggled a bit, was because those mons were both really good. And they kind of just made it hard for the Rainbreakers to consistently break down teams. So I think that's why they dropped. And I'm not sure NU's ready. So, naturally, our rain setters are even worse than what RU had. However, defensively down here, our checks are a lot worse too. We've got Vaporeon, and we even have Quillfish. That is an entire 2 Pokemon that might be able to keep up with them, and they're a lot worse at doing it because they're just not as bulky. Skewda also has coverage for Quillfish with Psychic Fangs, so that's not exactly going to stand up long term. And I think under Rain, Wave Crash from Floatzel probably sends Quillfish all the way out to South Africa or something. I haven't done the calcs. I'm a little bit scared of doing the calcs. So that's nice. I mean, I don't know how NU is gonna keep up with these. At least on paper, my immediate thought is Barraskewda's probably pretty broken, because I believe it's faster than Jolteon naturally. So, speed tier moment. I think with a Jolly nature, even without Swift Swim, you may just be faster than, Simeon? Let's check. Okay, thank God you're not faster than Passimian with a Jolly Nature. I was worried. So it's not that fast, but it is, again, if you go Jolly Nature outside of Rain, you are literally going to be outspeeding the entire unboosted metagame. And that's insane, because it just gives you another one of those fast bonds that, unless you have a Scarfer, you're not ever outspeeding. I mean, even Jolteon can't compete with Scooda. But I think the main reason that it would be pretty strong even outside of Rain is the coverage. It's got Close Combat, it's got Zen Headbutt, or not Zen Headbutt, I mean Psychic Fangs, it's got Ice Fang, Poison Fang, Crunch. It's got a lot of moves, and of course the relevant move being Psychic Fangs, being able to deal with Quillfish. And then you throw Terra into the equation. Maybe you're Terra Fighting, so that your Close Combat does 1,000,000 to Vaporeon. Maybe you're even just Terra Dark, so that you could, I don't know, hit like Bruxish, man. Maybe you just like Dark more as your offensive move to spam out. Also gives you a Sucker Punch resistance, which is pretty useful. I feel like that combination of power and speed, even outside of Rain, might be too much for Scooda to stay in you. Floatzel I'm not as sure on, because admittedly Floatzel is still going to be really weak unless it's using Wave Crash. And with how common Vaporeon is, maybe we find a way to justify Floatzel as staying in NU, I'm not sure. So, you know, my early take is Barraskewda I'd probably ban right now if I could. And Floatzel, I'm okay to let sit around for a little bit longer, but I do want to see... I want us to pay, like, very close attention and see how it's faring, because it still seems potentially ridiculous, even if it's limited by Manual Rain not ever being super strong. And then we got the other two. Florges immediately would be top tier. I mean, it's a fairy type that's actually good. No more justifying Little Bread Dog. As cute as Darkspin is, it's not very good. And Florges with Calm Mind especially sounds absolutely ridiculously good. Maybe to the point of being broken, because again, Terra kind of just makes a lot of things overpowered. And I could see Calm Mind Florges with like Terra, you know, Ground even, to lure into steals that we still do have. Plus Muck could be pretty decent. I could see Terra Steel just for general defensive purposes as well on a Calm Mind Sweeper. Wouldn't think that'd be too bad. Of course, naturally, though, I hope Florges could stay, because I do like having a fairy that is good. Fairy's a great defensive typing. And Florges would probably also just blanket check a lot of the strong special attackers. It also would give us another Wish Passer, and that's just inherently good to have around. And then Charizard dropped down. I don't know if Charizard will be very good. It'll kind of depend on how good Hyper Offense is, and losing Abomasnow, I mean, there's a little bit of give and take there. You could still take the Tuggy Hyper Offense idea in the samples with Memento spam, and maybe use something like that to enable Charizard. I think something like Belly Drum Salic Berry could be pretty strong, especially because Charizard is faster than all of these Choice Scarf users. Even if you go Adamant as your nature instead of Jolly, you're sitting at 299. So Toxicroak, Mabosstiff, Passimian, Metacham, these still are getting outrun by you. So maybe something like that is able to help it, but Charizard, between generations, it lost Defog, it lost Roost, it lost Toxic, so, you know, a lot of the moves that would have made it viable as just a general Mon, and obviously would have kept it from ever falling to NU, but a lot of those moves are gone now, so I'm not too sold on Charizard's prospects outside of that potential sweeper niche. Maybe someone will try out Specs. I mean, Zard is really strong, and I think it retained Hurricane. If it didn't, then, I mean, Lamau. But if it retained Hurricane, then I could see Specs being pretty good. Just, of course, limited by hazards being everywhere, always. And we can talk about the mons that rose to NU. I'm not even going to entertain what's going on here. I have no explanation. I don't know. So instead, we'll talk about the other two mons. Rotom-Frost, of course, rising, because it is just a generally really strong option, man. Just like regular Rotom and Electros, it's an electric type that can take advantage of Sandaconda. I do think there's a lot more incentive now to start running Stone Edge on Sandaconda. You probably drop Glare for it if you're still running Stealth Rock. And it's because of mods like Rotom-Frost and regular Rotom, and even Eel, where you do want to be able to start pressuring them, because seeding free turns is just really, really bad to do. But until that starts happening, Rotom-Frost makes a lot of sense as a response to that Sandaconda. And also, I mean, Rotom-Frost, I've mentioned this before, when you think about it in NU, traditionally, the reason that it was always a little bit limited is because Lantern would be pretty good, or just the power level as we got further along in generations was getting to the point where Rotom-Frost just wasn't worth running because it wasn't good enough. But, I mean, now, look, there's no Lantern. NU's power level isn't obscene, so it's a little bit better. And of course it has Nasty Plot nowadays too, so you can actually be a pretty potent setup mon. I think at the very least it's a strong wall breaker, and losing out on both Abomasnow and Frostmoth in the format helps it a lot because that was its best competition. Naturally, it also synergized really well with Abomasnow because you got perfect Blizzard accuracy, you also benefited from having that extra defense under Snow, but I still think that those losses will be evened out a bit by competition leaving. And in regular Oricorio Rose to NU, I've actually chilled out a little bit on this mod lately. I don't think it's as good as I originally thought. I think really it's the base typing. This is something I tried, really hammering into my analyses of Pom-Pom and Sensu, especially Pom-Pom though, where the reason Pom-Pom was just so good was because its base typing was great defensively, and you got a lot of turns to be able to set up Quiver Dance. You also were just a lot better defensively if you wanted to run the Defog set, because you had a lot better of a time switching into Pokemon. You could switch into Copperajah if it lacked Stone Edge. You were always walling Sandaconda, and Stone Edge wasn't going to beat you 1v1. You could always Terra if you needed to as well and manage it like that, but you just weren't really getting beat by a lot of the hazard setters. And, regular Oricorio is a little bit worse in that regard, because you've got the issue of Stone Edge with Copperajah, a lot more prevalent. Now, with Raja leaving, that's not as bad, but now Sandaconda comes back into the picture, where, again, I think there's a lot more reason to run Stone Edge on that now. You can't really switch in as safely because you might just get O-code. So that's a bit of an issue. In Quiver Dance, I feel like the spawn's just a lot more Terra reliant. Fire Flying doesn't feel nearly as good as Electric Flying. And if you think about how good Eel is, especially right now, the issue with regular Oricorio is if you ever Terra, your Terra types that you commonly see are Grass and Ground. Electros is Terra types commonly seen is Steel. Now, do you want to risk Terraing when there is still an Electros in the opposing team that could very easily Terra and now wall you for the rest of the game? You probably don't. So it's a little bit less consistent. Of course, if you go Ground, you're immune to T-Wave from Chansey, but otherwise Chansey will paralyze you. Something like Pom-Pom never had to deal with that, because Pom-Pom was able to just be immune to T-Wave with its base typing, and Pom-Pom's Quiver Dance sets were also always Terra Ground, so you never had that worry. And its Sensu at least was running like Taunt occasionally or Substitute, because Ghost as a defensive typing has a lot more use cases for that. You think about how Ghost would let you 1v1 Chansey with Taunt or Sub, because Chansey just couldn't touch you. So, this all comes back to, again, the point about general defensive utility with your base typing. Really doesn't matter a lot, it turns out, with the Oricorios. And as a result, I've just not been as sold on the last two. That could all change eventually. Terra is still really uninteractive with these Pokemon, but we've yet to see the last two Oricorios that we have really just showcase that it doesn't matter how bad your defensive typing is. Terra changing Revelation Dance's typing at any given point, is obscene. We have not had that come true. And now I can give a brief talk about why these mons dropped. Basculin, just too much competition for it. Bruxish was always better. And with Floatzel and Barraskewda dropping, there is literally zero reason right now to run Basculin. Masquerain dropped. I think it's just a matter of Sticky Web. People have decided they prefer Spidops. I think Sticky Web sucks. and that both should be PU, but that's... We had already seen the usage between them was pretty equal, which tells us Sticky Web in general was getting used a lot, but nowadays people are biasing towards a single Sticky Web setter. And if Vespiquen dropping, this is a little surprising, because I still think Vespiquen is pretty strong. I think what it probably is people are defaulting more to Quillfish now as their spiker, because it's a little bit better overall. You're a bit better of a defensive typing. You're not as Terra reliant, because keep in mind again, Vespiquen, if it gets knocked, it is now weak to rocks double as much as it normally would be if it was just a regular flying type. And so you do have to use your Terra to fix that, and that can be a pretty big opportunity cost if you do. You're also still weak to Passimian Rock Slide anyway. At least, like, Quillfish at least won't get OHKO'd by Earthquake if Passimian's running it. Vespiquen is going to get smashed by Rock Slide. So that's not too good. And Vespiquen's also pretty passive. And it's not like Quillfish is much better, but at the very least, Quillfish is fast, so there's a little bit less that it's threatened by. You know, you look at Quillfish versus the Electros, for example, and then Vespiquen versus the Electros. Vespiquen's just slower. Quill is not. So at the very least, Quill could maybe force Electros to go for its Terra Steel, or risk being poisoned by Toxic. Whereas Vespiquen, I mean, it can't really. And of course, if Eela's Substitute, then it could just freely set up a sub versus Vespiquen. So, there's that. But yeah, that's the coverage. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I am a little bit scared of Inyu right now in the state that it's going to be in, but as per usual, I'm always excited to try and figure it out going forward. Just see, alright, what do we got to adjust now? I hope y'all are having a good day. Hope y'all healthy. Hope y'all don't get fooled too many times. Catch you next time. Peace.